I'm Ellis Martin. In this segment of the Ellis Martin Report and Money Talk Radio, we speak with Joel Freudman, the CEO of Tru Precious Metals, trading on the TSX Venture Exchange as TRU and in the U.S. as TRUIF. Tru Precious Metals is advancing high-grade gold and copper discoveries in the central Newfoundland gold belt on its 100% owned Golden Rose project, originally optioned from the TSX-listed Altius Minerals. Golden Rose is a regional-scale 264.25 square kilometer land package, including 45 kilometers strike length along the deposit-bearing Calibre Valentine Lake Shear Zone, directly between Calibre Mining's Valentine Gold Project and Matador Mining's Calibre Gold Project. As a former practicing securities M&A corporate lawyer with focus on mining clients, Mr. Freudman currently serves as the CEO and director of both public and private mineral exploration companies. Mr. Freudman is the president of Resurgent Capital Corp., a Toronto merchant bank focused on undervalued microcapitalization Canadian public companies. Mr. Freudman is a member of the Law Society of Upper Canada and holds a Juris Doctor degree from Western University and a Bachelor of Commerce degree from the University of Toronto. Joel, welcome to the program. It's fantastic to have you on the air with us today.
Thanks, Ellis. Thanks for having me.
I'm always excited about a company doing business in the province of Newfoundland. It's easy to get things permitted there. You've got some really nice grab samples for both gold and silver with your Golden Rose project. And I think it's a real opportunity at the share price that you have right now, which is super unbelievably low considering all the assets that you have at 2.5 cents Canadian and 0.18 cents, just under 2 cents US. I just think, Joel, that our audience should take a close look at Tru Precious Metals, and I'm going to give you an opportunity to tell them why.
I agree with your assessment that there's a lot in the company for our relatively small size and market cap. Terrific project. Really, if you're investing in mineral exploration, you really got to go based on the asset first. We have a great project, Golden Rose, which I'm sure we'll dive into here. High grade gold everywhere on the property, frankly, which I can get into. Also, as you mentioned, we have found some high grade silver and high grade copper in drilling, which is pretty exciting, especially on the copper side. It's a nice electrification play or battery metals play, which is pretty nice kicker to the project. A lot of the gold majors right now are looking for copper exposure. So great starting point in terms of project. We have a strong management team with strong professional backgrounds, as well as the exploration team, quite important. And then also, unlike many companies of our size, we're very well capitalized. We have a strategic investor backing us, Ormond Mining, several $1 million of cash in the treasury. So we got a lot going on for a company of our size. I'm very excited what the future holds for us.
I see 11% copper here, and I get all excited. So does everybody. That's really, really significant. And I believe, I'm sure you do, that towards the fall, we're going to see a nice run in the equities with regard to copper and gold, where they can run up together. The price of gold and the price of copper, I'm talking about the commodities themselves, are certainly holding up.
Definitely. You saw gold break multiple record highs over the course of this year in 2024. Copper broke a record high recently this summer. And you have to think this is before additional money printing, quantitative easing. Inflation is still around, even though it's declining. There's increased geopolitical risk around the world. All the drivers you really want, particularly for precious metals, but also for copper, especially copper as a longer term play. They're really both there supporting the commodity price environment. We very much expect Tru is positioned to benefit from that, given that our project contains both. And actually on the grades on copper, yes, it is hard to find those grades. We're very lucky we have double-digit grades copper in terms of percentage in grab samples, rock samples on a certain segment of our property, kind of the north part of our property. And we have drilled high-grade copper too, where the proof's in the pudding, and we're still even hitting 1% to 2% copper in drilling a couple of years ago in a very small program. So it's always nice to tag some high grade in your drilling.
I was having lunch with my friend Bob Dickinson probably about a month ago, and he doesn't touch anything unless it's a district scale project, and that's exactly what you have.
Golden Rose is massive. I cannot overstate the size of the project. It's about, I think, 250 square kilometers, or for listeners in the States, probably talking 175 square miles, plus additional land under, maybe my math was off, but in the ballpark, I have some land under option additionally. So very large land package. And we actually assembled this. Like, we initially got the project from a $1 billion TSX listed company called Altius Minerals, and they optioned us maybe a third of what we currently have. We've since bought out that option, so we own the project 100% from them. We went around on basically an M&A acquisition spree in 2021 and 2022. We bought up or optioned all the land we possibly could in the area, recognizing that larger players, for them to come in, are going to want something district scale. And also, certainly, it will simply make us, if we're genuinely onto something on a discovery level, which is what increasingly looks to be the case, we're going to want to own as much land as possible. So we have a really nice land package here in the southwest of Newfoundland. My background is a securities and mergers lawyer, not a geologist, not a broker. So I haven't come from industry. I've come from more transactional background. I recognize mineral exploration can be very technical. It can be intimidating, frankly, to investors. So what you really got to do is follow the smart money who understands how to look at these projects from a technical level and who has geologists and engineers, and they can really attack a project, do due diligence you couldn't hope to do as an individual investor. So our three largest investors in order are Ormond Mining, which is a strategic investor out of Europe that has both a world-class geologist and a mine-building mining engineer on their team, both of whom are involved with Tru. Our second largest shareholder is TSX-listed Altius Minerals. It is a billion-dollar public company up here, and their whole business is generating projects for companies to explore with the view towards discoveries that will turn into royalties. And our third largest shareholder, Canadian precious metals billionaire Eric Sprott, who loves the precious metals. That's the top three shareholders. And number four, non-institutional, is myself, the CEO. I own 6 million shares. I own about 4% of the company, so I'm heavily invested here in the success of the company. And with that kind of background, you can take some comfort that these groups that have sophisticated technical experts on staff, they've done their homework on Tru before pulling the trigger on investments and getting involved and helping watch us and fund us to exploring the property. And so I think that's where it ties together that we have a really great, heavily institutional shareholder base and good insider ownership who is very familiar with the project. And then the project continues to deliver the results. If you're technical, you'll say, wow, large land package, you're in the right neighborhood in Newfoundland, which I can also speak to in momentarily, but you've also attracted the right people with the right technical firepower to the project, invaluable. And just on the technical piece, for those who are interested, there is a structural corridor. You can think of it as a main street. Structural corridor called the Calibre Valentine Lake Shear Zone, runs for about 40 plus kilometers through the whole heart of our property. That's about 25 to 30 miles. And this is a district deposit bearing structural corridor. So what that means in plain English, we are on one of the best streets in the entire province. And our neighbors are two of the biggest homes in the province, including the absolute biggest. So on one side of us is a company called Calibre Mining. They bought out our neighbor Marathon Gold for $340 million Canadian earlier this year. And the reason that Calibre Mining themselves is a billion market cap company, they're literally our next door neighbor now. And they bought our neighbor Marathon because Marathon had a 5 million ounce gold deposit right beside our Golden Rose project in Newfoundland that is literally being built into a mine as we speak and will be pouring gold in commercial production in early 2025. So we're literally next door to the biggest house in the entire province. It's the biggest gold mine in Atlantic Canada and like the whole east of the country. And on the other side of us, on this same street, there's a company called, it was Matador Mining, it's now called Omega. Anyways, they have 600,000 ounces of gold as well in resources. And these are numbers that have gone through scientific vetting. They're publicly available. So they're basically gold deposits on either side of our project. And we control all the land between the two. So we're literally sandwiched between two of the biggest gold deposits in the province. Ideal place to be. So if you like to do your own homework and you don't want to rely on the smart money, you can just look at a map and say, wow, these guys are literally surrounded by gold deposits.
So it's not unlikely that within 3 years or so, give or take, you've got a gold mine on that property, or somebody does.
Certainly we're working towards. What's pretty interesting about that, probably not have the mine up and running if we're that fortunate, but we are working in that direction. And I would hope that I would expect that we're delivering within 3 years. Was now a good time maybe to talk about some of the prospects on the property in terms of the progress towards discovery and building the asset package.
Okay.
Maybe just a couple of things I'll touch on here. We have this bonanza grade, basically gold we've discovered in the northeast of the province. If you're non-technical, suffice to say, we have quite high-grade gold on the property that's been discovered in both drilling and in channel samples. So what we did was we did a series of projects in late 22 and early 23 to kind of vector in on some of the more interesting gold areas on the project. And in the northeast of our project, right across from, in fact, this Calibre mining company with 5 million ounces, we were coming up with channel samples of 23.5 grams a ton to 57.5 grams a ton of gold. For a reference, medium grade gold is 1.5 to 5 grams. So we're coming up with an order of magnitude more of gold in our work there at this area, which is telling you like we're uncovering gold grades that most companies will never see on their projects in their entire history. And we're only scratching the surface here. Like we've been doing fairly limited programs. So this is the type of thing that with a well-organized drill program for which we're already funded because we're well capitalized, that's the type of thing that could blow open a discovery like this where you start getting people looking and saying, holy cow, like this could become a deposit. One day this could be mineable. To be clear, I'm not saying we have that confidence yet, but that's what you're starting to think when you look at the grades we have and the work that we've done so far over the past 3.5 years. That's certainly where we're trying to go. And we've made decent progress over the last 3.5 years towards that goal between the partnerships we've attracted and the exploration results we've uncovered. And that's just on the gold side. That's not even talking about the copper.
Okay, so I get the level of excitement listening to you, and I actually see it in your face. Our audience can't see you right now. It's definitely there. So I have to ask you, because I've taken a look at your chart. I did a little bit of a deep dive. Why are you so cheap?
It's a good question. I think it's one that every junior mineral exploration CEO, they always get, and they always feel they're cheap. I think there are a couple of sector factors that really do play into it. Number one, mineral exploration is technical, and so it is a more speculative end of the market, that's for sure. And in Canada, particularly where the interest rates are higher, people are making their mortgage payments, there is less investor capital, especially over the last couple of years, into the junior exploration space. So I think you've seen people take profits after the last gold run in 21 and 22. People were down these companies indiscriminately, simply to just make their position, recover liquidity to probably pay the mortgage, buy groceries. We're definitely starting to see investor capital slowly creep back in, even over the summer with the recent gold price and copper price moves. And I think another one is over time, we turned over the shareholder base. So a lot of the shareholders who were involved initially, they bought in when gold was spiking. And then when we didn't immediately run through our entire treasury on drilling, they said, I'm going to go look elsewhere very quickly. The problem with that approach is if you're constantly trying to trade in and out of these names, you're going to miss the big unexpected results. So for example, company announces drill program, typically gets the share price moving. That's something that's on the horizon for us. Company announces something on the corporate side, like a strategic financing, which we've done, an M&A opportunity. Those kind of things will really move the needle, but you can't necessarily see them coming as an investor. And so you do have to have some degree of patience. Now our shares, we're not seeing a lot of selling. We're at a low level, but we have a very good core shareholder base. Like I said, about half institutional and probably another like 15 or so % high net worth. And they're all holding, waiting for us to pull the trigger on the drill program, maybe corporate opportunities. And these are things that take months to come together. Luckily, we're closer, I feel like, to the end of that process than certainly earlier this year when the markets were generally overlooking a lot of these names.
Look, even a 25-cent stock with all the assets that you just mentioned during this interview would be called a cheap stock. And right now, that would make you essentially a 10-banger. If you get up to $1 someday, that's not inconceivable in a run in the fall potentially or at the beginning of next year. I'm a happy guy.
You have to position yourself a bit ahead of these things, right? So we've seen the gold price move. We've seen the copper price move. They're already at the record highs. It's the summer. We haven't had even a ton of large news in the last several months as we've been setting up again on the exploration front and the corporate front. I think as you get increasing sentiment, investor sentiment and capital start to creep into the sector, it's like at first gradually and then suddenly you get any kind of big sector catalyst. Like you said, that'll bring a real tailwind to the sector. So the prices are terrific. We're seeing more liquidity. We're seeing more investor interest in terms of commodity prices. And you get anything that kind of really spikes the price of either of those commodities. Those help independently of what we do. But obviously, since we can't wait for the market or commodities prices, we've been diligently working probably the last 3 to 4 months at least, preparing on both the exploration front as well as the corporate front for things that will move the needle. And I think that's really for investors, for market participants, for industry. That's what they should be looking out for Tru. We're not looking to put out a news release every week that says we sent a guy into the field. We're looking to drop large news, and those things don't come together quickly. But when they do, it's like our $3 million strategic financing from Ormond last year. Or a few years before that, it's like, well, we did channel samples, high-grade gold. That program took 6 months to put together and to run, and then all the audience sees is a press release at the end. These things take time to do properly, but we're big game hunting here. We're not looking to play small ball, both on the corporate front and the exploration front. I think that's important to keep in mind.
I can tell from listening to you and from looking at your news releases, there's no fluff there. You're just putting out the facts that you have to report because you're a public company. The speculation, which we don't encourage, is really not there in the releases at all, and you've got the goods, so good on you. Is there anything you want to say about your team?
Happy to speak about the team. This is far from a one-man show. I am fortunate to be the CEO. I co-founded the company in 2020. My background, as I mentioned, securities and mergers lawyer. I had stints at Stikeman Elliott, which is a Bay Street law firm in Toronto, as well as Royal Bank of Canada, among other places. I've worked at very large organizations before, trying to bring that kind of discipline and background to a micro-cap speculative mineral exploration company. Our president and CFO, Olga Nikitovich, she's a seasoned mining executive and an accountant. She started her career at PricewaterhouseCoopers. Very rarely would you see a Big Four accountant be CFO of one of these junior mineral exploration companies. That's great on the corporate side. I think where our real not so secret weapons are on the technical side. And again, if you're investing in a mineral exploration company and you don't know a lot on the technical side, you're betting on management, but especially the technical people. I think we have two real strong not so secret weapons. One of them, his name's Professor Garth Earls. He comes to us via our strategic investor, Ormond Mining. I've worked at this point now with geologists for 4.5 years. No disrespect to prior ones, but Garth is like a world-class geologist. He helped the discovery of the Currano gold mine in Northern Ireland, which is, I believe, about 6 million ounces. So like this guy can find major gold mines. Certainly done it before. And he's now putting all his efforts on Tru and our Golden Rose project. So that tells you, like, if you have someone like that looking at the project, they're very serious. We're very fortunate to have Garth involved. He's also been helping us with things like exploration planning and drill planning, because he knows the objective here is not to find a single grab sample that's great and nothing else. It's to find real potential for a discovery of size. Eventually, right, you want a resource or a deposit or eventually a mine. And the other gentleman we're very fortunate to have on the technical side, also through Ormond Mining, he sits on our board of directors. His name is Steve Nickel. He is a mining engineer by background, but very interestingly, he's like a mine builder. So he has put a multi-commodity type mine into production in Spain over, I believe, about 10 years. And he is all like execution, operations, how do we do it effectively? How do we avoid bottlenecks? Very rarely would you see a mining engineer, on the board of a $5 million market cap company. And what's important is, when you're talking about could we build the mine and that kind of thing, those would be great problems to have in the future. But you need someone like a mining engineer involved who can say, hey, your grab samples are great, your channel samples are great. How do we set this up so that a major looks at it and says, this can be a mine one day? Are these grades economic for eventual development of this project so that we have someone come in and partner with us on the project? And you really need a mining engineer skill set, because it doesn't just end when you get the find. You then have to advance and build. And so between Garth, who's, as I mentioned, our geologist, our project evaluations advisor, and Steve Nickel as our mining engineer, we're loaded up, frankly, on the technical side, and very lucky to be in that position.
Those are the two most important people in any mining project, in any company: the VP of Exploration, maybe even more importantly, the mining engineer. Even before you acquire a property, that individual can go out in the field and really tell you if he or she thinks it's going to be economic from the start. And guys like you, coming from the money end, the finance end of the business, can evaluate with those people whether or not you even want to proceed.
Absolutely. I know firsthand the level of due diligence that these two guys and their company, Ormond Mining, did on Tru over months and months in 2023. Like, we met them at PDAC in March 2023. We announced the investment at the very end of June, and there was still due diligence until we closed at the start of September. So that was like a 6-month process of ongoing technical due diligence, not just corporate, and we passed that test. You have to ask yourself, if those guys are seeing something good attached to this project, you should probably be taking a look at the company yourself if you're interested in gold and or copper exposure, and even silver, like you mentioned.
Joel, this has been a fantastic way to be introduced to your company. Thank you so much for joining me today, and thanks for sponsoring the Ellis Martin Report. It's great to have you on the air.
Thanks so much for having me, Ellis.
I've been speaking with Joel Freudman, the CEO of Tru Precious Metals, trading on the TSX Venture Exchange as TRU, and in the U.S. on the OTC as TRUIF. The company's website is TruPreciousMetals.com. That's Tru spelled T-R-U, PreciousMetals.com. Tru Precious Metals is a paid sponsor of the Ellis Martin Report, which means we are biased. Forward-looking statements have been made. We make no company recommendations on this program with regard to the purchase of any securities. As always, when considering investing, after doing your own due diligence, do so at your own risk. This is Money Talk Radio, and I'm Ellis Martin.